They thought one small tug would strip me bare in front of 200 guests. Instead, it triggered a transformation that brought the entire ballroom to its feet. My father's loving toast, a carefully crafted character assassination until the screen flickered and changed everything. All it took was one nod to the tech booth, and their perfectly constructed lives shattered right there on the dance floor. They wanted to make me the laughingstock of my own wedding. They never imagined they'd be the ones left exposed. My name is Riley Hart, and 3 weeks before my wedding, I discovered that the people who gave me life were planning to destroy it. It was past midnight when I returned to my parents' house to retrieve the pearl earrings Grandma Rose had left for me, something borrowed. She'd said, pressing them into my palm with trembling fingers. The house sat dark except for the thin strip of light bleeding from beneath my father's study door. I should have just grabbed the earrings from my old room and left. But the sound of my name spoken with such venom by my own mother froze me in the hallway. Riley's always been too proud for her own good. My mother's voice carried through the oak door, each word dripping with a satisfaction that made my skin crawl. This will finally put her in her place. I pressed myself against the wall, heart hammering. The scent of late-night coffee mixed with my father's cologne drifted into the hallway. Through the crack under the door shadows moved 3 of them, my parents and someone else. The timing has to be perfect. My sister Sloane's voice. Of course. Right when Dad finishes his toast when everyone's looking at her, I'll pull the thread. The whole outer layer will come away. She'll be standing there in her underwear trying to cover herself while 200 people laugh. My hand flew to my mouth, stifling a gasp. The hardwood floor felt ice cold through my stockings as I sank to my knees, ear pressed to the door. And the slideshow. My father's baritone, usually so warm when speaking to clients at Northbridge and Gray Consulting, now carried the clinical detachment of a surgeon planning where to cut. "Marion, you have the photos ready." Every awkward teenage moment, my mother confirmed. That awful school picture with the braces and acne. The one from summer camp where she wet herself. The video from her failed piano recital. I've titled it, Riley's Journey to Womanhood. They laughed. All 3 of them laughed at the thought of my humiliation, the sound mixing with the grandfather clocks ticking in the foyer. My fingernails dug crescents into my palms. "She's gotten too big for her britches since Ethan proposed," Sloane added, "acting like she's better than us because she's marrying into the Walker family. This will remind her where she comes from." "And remind the Walkers what they're really getting," my father said. "A coordinator at a mid-tier consulting firm who can barely afford her share of the wedding. If they knew how much we've had to cover." 43,000 so far, my mother interrupted. "I've been keeping track. Every penny we've spent because Princess Riley wanted her dream wedding. Well, she'll get a wedding no one will forget." The coffee scent grew stronger as footsteps approached the door. I scrambled backward, my knee hitting the console table. A picture frame wobbled. I caught it a photo of the 4 of us at Sloane's college graduation, all smiles, and lifted champagne glasses. Lies every smile a lie. The breakaway dress arrives Tuesday. Sloane continued, her voice moving away from the door again. I told the seamstress it was for a theater production. She reinforced the thread I'll pull with fishing line so it won't break accidentally. One firm tug during the father-daughter dance and boom, the whole thing unravels. My stomach churned. The dress. My beautiful dress that I'd cried over when I first tried it on, feeling like a princess. They'd turned it into a weapon against me. "What about Ethan?" my father asked. "He might try to cover her or—" "I'll make sure he's getting drinks at the bar," my mother said. "Veronica Hale is giving a toast right before yours, Victor. I'll send Ethan to fetch her a water. He's too polite to refuse." They had thought of everything, mapped out my humiliation with the same precision my father used to plan corporate takeovers. The clock chimed once, midnight. "Should we feel bad about this?" Sloane asked, but her tone suggested she was fishing for reassurance, not expressing doubt. "She needs to learn her place," my mother said firmly. 28 years of attitude of thinking she's smarter than everyone else, of those little smirks when she corrects our grammar or explains our own businesses to us. One dose of humility won't kill her. Besides, my father added, it's just a prank. If she can't laugh at herself on her wedding day, what does that say about her? We're doing the walkers a favor, showing them who they're really getting before it's too late to back out. Just a prank. 200 witnesses to my humiliation photos that would circulate on social media forever. The defining moment of what should be the happiest day of my life, just a prank. I rose slowly, my legs shaking. The pearl earrings lay forgotten in my childhood room as I slipped back out the front door, closing it with the same care a thief might use. The spring air hit my flushed face, carrying the scent of my mother's prized roses. I made it 3 houses down before I vomited into the Weatherby's hedge. Afterward, I sat on the curb, my mind racing faster than my pulse. They wanted to pull a thread. Let them pull it. But they had no idea what that thread was actually connected to, what would unravel when they gave it that firm tug. Because I wasn't the lost little girl they thought I was, depending on their money and approval. I had secrets of my own. I pulled out my phone and opened an encrypted email app, my fingers steady now despite the rage boiling in my chest. 3 weeks until the wedding. 3 weeks to prepare a reversal that would make their prank look like child's play. They wanted to make me the laughingstock. They wanted 200 people to witness my humiliation. I'd give them a show they'd never forget. But I wouldn't be the one left standing in my underwear when the curtain fell. The clock tower at the end of the street chimed twice. 2 a.m. In my parents' house, they were probably toasting their clever plan with my father's expensive whiskey, congratulating themselves on teaching me a lesson. I stood brushing dirt from my skirt and made myself a promise under the cold stars I'd let them pull their thread. But when they did, it wouldn't be my dress that came undone. It would be them. The morning after the eavesdropping, I sat in my corner office, not the cramped cubicle my family believed I occupied at Northbridge and Gray, but the top-floor suite of the Meridian Tower, 32 stories above the city. The nameplate on my door read R. Harrison, a convenient alias I'd maintained for 5 years. Behind that door, I wasn't Riley Hart, the struggling event coordinator. I was the CEO and majority shareholder of Halcyon Strategy Group. My laptop screen reflected off the floor-to-ceiling windows as I reviewed the Morrison acquisition files. $200 million in assets, 17 international patents, and a revolutionary AI platform that would reshape predictive analytics. My signature would seal the deal tomorrow. The same signature my parents thought belonged to someone who couldn't afford her own wedding. The encrypted phone on my desk buzzed. Singapore line. The Port Aria expansion is approved. My CFO's voice came through clear despite the distance. The government's greenlit all permits. We'll break ground next quarter. Excellent. Send the announcement to PR, but embargo it until May 1st. 2 weeks after my wedding, after the dust settled from what was coming, I ended the call and spun my chair to face the city. Somewhere down there, my mother was probably meeting with the florist, pretending to care about centerpiece arrangements while plotting my downfall. Let her. She had no idea her daughter owned the building she'd just walked past, or that the consulting firm where my father played big shot had tried and failed to poach 3 of my top executives last year. The deception had started simply enough. Fresh out of Stanford with my MBA, I'd returned home to find my family's attitude unchanged. To them, I was still just Riley, not as pretty as Sloane, not as naturally charismatic as my father, destined for middle management at best. When my first startup sold for 8 figures, I incorporated under a different name. When Forbes wanted to profile me, I declined. When Halcyon grew into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, I kept my silence. Why the family therapist? I'd seen briefly suggested it was self-protection. Maybe. Or maybe I was waiting for them to see me really see me without the money and success forcing their hand. How naive. A knock interrupted my thoughts. My assistant David entered with a coffee and a knowing look. He was one of the few who knew both my identities. "Your 10 o'clock canceled," he said, setting the cup on my desk. "Something about a family emergency. Should I reschedule?" "No, clear the morning. I need to make some calls." He nodded and left. I pulled up a different screen, my real work for today. If my family wanted to play games, they'd learn I'd been playing at a much higher level for years. First call Isadora Vale, the fashion designer who'd created custom pieces for 3 Oscar winners this year. We'd met at a charity gala where I'd been representing Halcyon openly. "Riley, darling," her voice sparkled with warmth. "Tell me you're finally letting me dress you for something fabulous." "My wedding, actually. I need a favor, a complicated one." "I'm intrigued." "My current dress needs modifications, specific ones. Are you familiar with breakaway costume design?" A pause, then a laugh. "Honey, I've dressed Broadway for 20 years. What are we breaking away and why?" I explained carefully, selectively. Not the full humiliation plan, just that there might be an attempted wardrobe sabotage, and I needed to turn it into something spectacular. "A transformation instead of a humiliation," she mused. "Chrysalis to butterfly, but make it fashion. I'll need to see the dress immediately." "Tomorrow. Bring coffee and those cronuts from Dominique's. Will make you unforgettable." Second call. Darren Cole. In public, he was one of the city's hottest DJs. In private, he ran a security firm that specialized in corporate espionage prevention. We'd worked together when a competitor tried to hack Halcyon's servers. "You need surveillance at your wedding." He sounded amused after I outlined the basics. "That's new. Usually people want me to not record those." "Full coverage. Every angle. Audio enhancement on specific targets. And I need you running the AV system personally." "The Ravencrest estate, right? I know their setup. Antiquated but workable. What's the real play here, Riley?" "Insurance," I said simply, "and possibly evidence." "Legal trouble." "Not for me. My favorite kind. Send me the guest list and a floor plan. I'll have cameras you couldn't spot with a microscope." The final call was the hardest. Jenna Morell answered on the first ring. "Tell me you're not in legal trouble," she said by way of greeting. "I just got you out of that patent mess last year." "Different kind of trouble. I need a forensic accountant, quietly." "How quiet?" "Silent, and it's personal, not business." She whistled low. "That's serious? What are we looking for?" "Financial transfers from my parents' accounts. Specifically anything involving my sister Sloane, and amounts over $10,000 in the last 6 months. Also any communications with Marcus Thorne." "Thorne? That sleazeball who tried to short your stock last year. What's he got to do with your parents?" "That's what I need to find out." "On it. Legally, of course. All public records and social media. Amazing what people post these days." I hung up and stared at my reflection in the laptop screen. The woman looking back wasn't the Riley my family knew. She was sharper, harder, with eyes that had seen boardroom betrayals and hostile takeovers. She'd built an empire in shadows, while her family plotted to embarrass her over borrowed money. The irony wasn't lost on me. They thought I was living above my means, desperately clinging to a marriage with Ethan for status. They had no idea I could buy the entire Walker family business without blinking. Or that Ethan had signed a prenup protecting my assets because he insisted he loved me, not my money. He thought came from smart investments and a small inheritance from a great aunt who never existed. I pulled up my personal accounts hidden behind 3 shell companies and an offshore trust. More zeros than my parents would see in 10 lifetimes. Enough to make their $43,000 look like pocket change. The wedding costs they'd thrown in my face I deliberately let them pay, maintaining my cover as their struggling daughter. Every check they wrote with sighs and guilt trips I could have covered without touching my checking account. But it wasn't about the money. It never had been. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Dinner tonight, I miss you." My heart twisted. Sweet, honest Ethan, who loved the woman he thought I was. After the wedding, after the revelation, would he still, or would he feel betrayed by my deception as much as my family's cruelty? I texted back, "Yes, 8 p.m. There's something I need to tell you." Not everything. Not yet. But enough to prepare him. He deserved that much. The morning sun climbed higher, casting geometric shadows across my office. Somewhere in this city, my family was perfecting their plan to humiliate me. They'd spent years making me feel small, insignificant, less than. Now they wanted to cement that feeling in front of everyone who mattered to me. I smiled, the expression sharp as a blade. They wanted to pull a thread. Let them. But they'd better be prepared for what unraveled next. Because the little girl they'd dismissed, overlooked, and underestimated hadn't just grown up. She'd grown dangerous. And in exactly 20 days, they'd learned just how much. The war room took shape in my private conference suite at Halcyon, though I'd told Ethan I was working late at Northbridge and Gray. 5 people who'd never normally share the same air now sat around my glass table, each a crucial piece in the chess game I was orchestrating. Isadora Vale arrived first, wheeling in my wedding dress on a portable rack. She'd transformed it in 3 days. The original remained intact, but now featured an ingenious hidden infrastructure. Darlings, she addressed the room with theatrical flair. What we have here is couture engineering. The outer layer, see these attachment points, connects via micromagnets and dissolvable thread. One pull, and instead of falling apart like your saboteurs expect, it releases in a controlled spiral. Underneath, she lifted the hem, revealing iridescent fabric that seemed to breathe with light. Crystal-infused satin that's invisible under the outer layer until exposed to direct lighting. Which brings us to... My cue, Darren Cole interrupted, unfolding a tablet showing the Ravencrest Estates layout. I've mapped every spotlight, every angle. When the dress transformation happens, and I'm assuming it will be during the father-daughter dance, we hit her with pin spots from 3 directions. The crystals will explode with light. It'll look like she's glowing from within. Jenna Morell barely glanced up from her laptop. Poetic. Meanwhile, I found your smoking gun. Your parents withdrew $43,000 from their joint account, but the money didn't go to wedding vendors. She turned the screen toward me. It went to Sloan. 6 transfers over 2 months, all under $10,000 to avoid reporting requirements. Your sister then paid the vendors from her account. Money laundering, Darren asked. Tax evasion, Jenna corrected. They're writing it off as a business expense through your father's consulting firm, claiming it's client entertainment, fraud technically. I felt the familiar ice in my veins, the same sensation I got before hostile negotiations. And Marcus Thorne. Now that's interesting. Jenna pulled up another screen. Coffee with your mother last Tuesday. Lunch with your father yesterday. And look at this. She showed a social media photo. Your sister at his gallery opening 2 weeks ago. Since when does Sloan care about modern art? Since never, I muttered. Marcus Thorne, the man who tried to destroy my company through short selling and rumor campaigns. The man I'd personally crushed in court. And now he was circling my family like a vulture. A knock interrupted us. David entered with 2 more people I'd specifically requested, Veronica Hale, CEO of Hale Industries, and one of Halcyon's board members, and Robert Chase, the venture capitalist who'd backed my first startup. Riley. Veronica embraced me warmly. She was everything I aspired to be, powerful, respected, and utterly uncompromising. David briefed us. We're in. Robert nodded, his silver hair catching the light. Anyone who tries to humiliate my favorite protege deserves what's coming. What do you need? I'd called them for credibility. When my identity was revealed, these titans of industry standing in my corner would silence any doubts about my success. Just your presence, I said, and your honest opinions about my professional capabilities if asked. If asked, Veronica laughed. Honey, I'll volunteer it, loudly. Darren cleared his throat. About the technical aspects. I'll have micro cameras in the centerpieces, the band's equipment, even the cake topper. Full audio on your family's table. But the slideshow, that's where we can really play. Explain, I said. He grinned. Your mother's planning to load her humiliation slideshow during the toasts, right? Well, I'll let her. But I'll have 3 backup systems ready to override. The second that USB goes in, I can swap the content. Question is, what do we replace it with? Jenna raised her hand. I vote for the forensic accounting evidence. Nothing says surprise like tax fraud at a wedding. Too dry, Isadora countered. This is theater. We need emotional impact. I stood walking to the window. 20 stories below, the city pulsed with life, oblivious to the small drama playing out in my family. But every empire started with personal battles. We use their own words, I said finally. Darren, can you get audio of them discussing the plan? Already done. I planted devices after your first call. Your sister's particularly chatty. Something about hoping you cry so much your makeup runs. Perfect. We let my father start his toast. We let him build to whatever cruel punchline he's planned. Then right when Sloane makes her move, we override the screens. Audio of them plotting financial documents, and I turned back to the room. A simple title card with my real position at Halcyon. That's it. Robert looked surprised. No dramatic speech about overcoming adversity. The facts will speak louder than any speech, I said. Besides, I want to see their faces when they realize the daughter they've dismissed as a failure could buy and sell them 100 times over. Veronica smiled slowly. It's elegant, brutal but elegant. We spent the next 2 hours refining details. Contingency plans for contingency plans. If Sloane grabbed the wrong thread. If the AV system failed. If my parents somehow discovered our counterplot. Isadora even designed a backup dress just in case. One more thing, Jenna said as we wrapped up. I did some digging on why Marcus Thorne is suddenly interested in your family. Turns out his new business partner is Eleanor Vance. The name hit me like cold water. Eleanor Vance, my father's former mistress. The woman whose affair had nearly destroyed my parents' marriage 10 years ago. He's going to use her, I said quietly. Bring her to the wedding. Create a scene. Another humiliation, Darren agreed. Pile it on while you're down. I laughed, surprising everyone. Let him. In fact, make sure she's at table 12. Good sightlines to the head table. You want your father's mistress at your wedding? Isadora looked aghast. I want authenticity, I corrected. When everything unravels, I want genuine reactions. I want the masks to slip completely. The room fell silent. Then Robert spoke. Remind me never to cross you, Riley. I learned from the best, I said, thinking of all the boardrooms where I'd been underestimated, all the negotiations where being young and female meant fighting twice as hard for half the respect. My family taught me that love is conditional and loyalty is currency. They're about to learn I've been saving up. As the team dispersed, Darren lingered. You sure about this? Once that genie's out of the bottle? It's been out for years, I said. They just didn't notice. This isn't revenge, Darren. It's revelation. He nodded and left. Alone in my conference room, I stared at my wedding dress transformed from a symbol of vulnerability into armor. In 2 weeks, I'd walk down an aisle lined with people who thought they knew me. My parents would smile, believing they held all the cards. Sloane would finger the thread she'd hidden, anticipating my humiliation. They had no idea they were walking into a trap 5 years in the making. Every slight, every dismissive comment, every moment they'd made me feel small, I'd channeled into building an empire they couldn't even imagine. The thread they wanted to pull wasn't attached to my dress. It was attached to their entire house of cards, and I could hardly wait to watch it fall. The candle flame flickered between us at Chez Laurent, casting shadows across Ethan's concerned face. I'd chosen this restaurant deliberately quiet, private, with no chance of running into family. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for the envelope I'd carried for 3 days, waiting for the right moment. You've been different, Ethan said softly, covering my hand with his. Ever since last week. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls. Riley, if you're having second thoughts about the wedding. No, the word came out sharper than intended. I softened my voice. No, Ethan, never about marrying you, but there's something. I haven't been entirely honest with you. His brown eyes warmed, trusting everything my family's weren't searched my face. Whatever it is, we can work through it. I slid the envelope across the white tablecloth. My letter written and rewritten a dozen times, trying to find the words that wouldn't destroy us. Read this, please, and then decide if you still want to marry me. He frowned but opened the envelope. I watched his expression change as he read, confusion, surprise, a flicker of hurt. The restaurant's soft jazz seemed too loud in the silence between us. You own Halcyon Strategy Group. He looked up, bewildered. The Halcyon that just acquired Morrison Industries, the one featured in the Wall Street Journal last month. I nodded, unable to speak. But you said you were a coordinator at Northbridge and Gray. For 3 years you've said— He stopped reading more. His face went pale. Your family is planning to humiliate you at our wedding. Ethan! They're going to strip you naked in front of our guests, your own parents. His voice rose slightly, then dropped to a dangerous whisper. And you've known for a week. Let me explain. Is any of this real? He gestured between us. Us? Or was I just part of some elaborate deception too? The accusation cut deeper than any of my family's cruelties. You're the only real thing in my life, I said, my voice breaking. Everything else, the job, the struggling finances, letting my parents pay for things that was all pretense. But not you. Never you. Why? He set down the letter, his hands flat on the table. Help me understand Riley. Why hide this from me, from everyone? I chose my words carefully. When I met you, I'd already been living the lie for 2 years. You fell in love with Riley, the coordinator, not Riley, the CEO. I kept waiting for the right time to tell you, but the longer I waited, the harder it became. And I was scared. Of what? That you'd look at me differently. That every dinner, every gift, every moment would be tainted by money. That you'd wonder if you truly loved me, or just the idea of what I could provide. I laughed bitterly. Ironic, isn't it? My family thinks I'm marrying you for status, and I've been terrified you'd think you were marrying me for money. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, processing. The waiter approached but retreated at Ethan's subtle headshake. The prenup, he said suddenly. You insisted on it to protect assets from a small inheritance, but it was really to protect everything. Halcyon, the investments, the properties. About $300 million in total assets. He whistled low. And your family has no idea. None. They see what they've always seen, their disappointing daughter who needs their help. It let me stay close to Grandma Rose without the money complicating things. She's the only family that matters to me. Besides the family plotting your humiliation. His jaw tightened. We should cancel the wedding. Elope. Go to Vegas tonight and— No, I gripped his hand. That's what the old Riley would do. Run. Hide. Let them win by default. But I'm done running, Ethan. I'm done being small for their comfort. So what's your plan? Just let them— I have a team in place. The dress is rigged to transform, not fall. The AV system will be under our control. When they try to humiliate me, they'll expose themselves instead. I squeezed his fingers. But I need to know you're with me. Not just for the wedding, but for what comes after. When everyone knows who I really am. He pulled his hand away and my heart sank. Then he stood, coming around to my side of the table. He knelt beside my chair, taking my face in his hands. Riley Hart, he said quietly. I fell in love with a woman who corrects my grammar, who cries at dog adoption commercials, who eats ice cream for breakfast when she's stressed. A woman who visits her grandmother every Sunday and brings her tulips even out of season. That woman could be broke or a billionaire, I don't care. She's who I want to wake up next to for the rest of my life. Tears spilled down my cheeks, even after I lied. You hid things. There's a difference. He wiped my tears with his thumbs. Though we're going to have a long talk about communication after this wedding circus is over. I promise, no more secrets. None, he agreed. Now tell me about this team, and what you need me to do. Relief flooded through me. I spent the next hour detailing everything: Isadora's dress modifications, Darren's surveillance network, Jenna's financial evidence. Ethan's expression darkened with each revelation about my family's plan. Sloane's in on it too. He shook his head. I always thought she was just shallow, not cruel. She's both, I said simply. Always has been. I was just too hopeful to see it. And you're sure you want to go through with this? We could still expose them privately, handle it without the public spectacle. They chose the venue, I interrupted. They want 200 witnesses to my humiliation, fine. Those same witnesses will see who they really are. Every investor who's ever shaken my father's hand, every society matron who admires my mother's charity work, they'll all see the truth. Ethan studied me for a long moment. This isn't really about revenge, is it? I considered the question. It's about ending the performance, theirs and mine. After the wedding, no more hiding. No more pretending to be less than I am to make others comfortable. Including you, you deserve a wife who's honest about everything. I have conditions, he said suddenly. First, we tell my parents. Tomorrow. They should know what they're walking into. Agreed. Second, after the wedding, we take a real honeymoon. Somewhere without cell service where you can't run a multi-million-dollar company for at least 2 weeks. Billion, I corrected. Multi-billion, but yes, agreed. Third, he stood pulling me up with him. You let me handle my part without trying to control every detail. Your family won't be the only one surprised by what I'm capable of. I raised an eyebrow. What are you planning? You're not the only one who can keep secrets, he said, his smile sharp. Let's just say my best man's speech might include some interesting visual aids. My future in-laws should be more careful about what they say in restaurant bathrooms. Ethan Walker, I said slowly. Are you telling me you've been recording them? Insurance, he shrugged. I protect what's mine. And you, Riley Hart, soon to be Riley Walker, are definitely mine. For the first time since that awful night outside my parents' house, I felt genuinely light. Not happy there was too much pain ahead for that. But free. I love you, I said simply. I love you too, he replied. All of you. The coordinator, the CEO, and whoever you decide to be next. We left the restaurant hand in hand. In 10 days, I'd walk down an aisle in a dress designed to betray me toward a father planning my humiliation past a sister positioned to destroy me. But I wouldn't walk alone. And when the smoke cleared, I'd still be standing. They would not. Isadora's atelier looked like a war zone of silk and satin, with my wedding dress as the centerpiece on an elevated platform. She circled it like a general planning an invasion, while her assistant marked strategic points with colored pins. The engineering is exquisite, she murmured, running her fingers along the hidden seams. Your sister chose the attachment point well right here at the back waist where the stress is highest. One pull would normally split the entire structure. But not anymore, I said. Not anymore. She smiled a predator's grin. Watch this. She tugged the exact spot where Sloane would grab. Instead of tearing, the outer layer of Duchess satin began to release in a controlled spiral, each panel floating away like a butterfly's wing. Underneath the crystal-embedded layer, caught the afternoon light streaming through the windows, throwing rainbows across the walls. The physics are beautiful, she continued. Each panel is weighted at the bottom with tiny glass beads. They'll flutter and spin as they fall, creating a cloud effect around you. Meanwhile, the underdress, she gestured to the revealed creation. It was breathtaking. The bodice appeared to be made of liquid starlight, thousands of microcrystals hand-sewn in constellation patterns. The skirt flowed like water, each movement sending new prisms of light dancing across the fabric. Darren sent me the lighting schematics, Isadora said. The moment the transformation begins, you'll be hit with pure white light from 3 angles. These crystals are specifically chosen to fragment that light. You'll literally glow. How long will the transformation take? 12 seconds from first pull to final reveal. We've tested it 16 times. Do you want to try? I shook my head. I trust you. What about Sloane's dress? Isadora's smile widened. Ah, the bridesmaid dress. Your sister brought it in for minor alterations last week, not knowing my assistant recognized her from your description. We made some adjustments of our own. She produced Sloane's dress, a deep burgundy creation she'd insisted on choosing herself, designed to ensure she'd outshine the other bridesmaids. Isadora turned it inside out, revealing the modifications. See these seams? They've been carefully weakened at stress points. Normal movement dancing sitting all fine. But if she makes any sudden forceful movements, like, say, lunging to grab at you. She gave a sharp tug and the side seams split dramatically. Oops. She'll blame the seamstress. Let her try. We have video documentation of the dress's perfect condition when she picked it up. Plus, my reputation speaks for itself. If Sloane Hart wants to claim Isadora Vale made a faulty garment, she better have excellent lawyers. I studied both dresses, marveling at the reversal. What was meant to be my humiliation had become my transformation. What was Sloane's armor would become her undoing. "There's one more element," Isadora said, producing a small velvet box. "You're something new." Inside lay a hairpin, unlike anything I'd ever seen. It looked like captured starlight with diamonds arranged in a cascade pattern. "Press the center stone," she instructed. I did, and tiny LED lights within the diamonds activated, creating a subtle halo effect. "Battery lasts 4 hours," she explained. "Darren can trigger it remotely when the transformation happens. You'll have light coming from above and within. Very ethereal. Very ascending above petty mortals." "It's perfect." I secured the pin in my hair, checking the effect in the mirror. "What do I owe you?" "Please, after what you did for my nephew, getting him into that design program, funding his scholarship, consider us even." She paused. "Plus, I haven't had this much fun in years. Couture warfare is my new favorite genre." Her assistant appeared with an iPad. "Ms. Vale, the Washington Post-style reporter, is confirming attendance. She wants to know if there's anything special she should watch for." Isadora glanced at me. I nodded. "Tell her the fashion will be transformative," Isadora said carefully. "She won't want to miss the father-daughter dance." "Perfect." Charlotte Reeves from the Post had a sharp eye and a sharper pen. She'd document everything with the precision of a court reporter. My phone buzzed. A text from Jenna. "Found something. Can you come by the office?" I left Isadora finalizing details and drove to Jenna's law firm. She met me in the lobby, practically vibrating with excitement. "Conference room," she said tersely. "Now." Inside, she'd laid out printed documents like evidence in a trial. "Your parents have been busy. That 43,000, it's just the tip. Look." She walked me through the trail. Payments to vendors that were inflated with kickbacks flowing to Sloane. Contracts with cancellation fees that were never actually charged, the money diverted instead. In total, they'd skimmed almost 70,000 from wedding expenses. "But here's the smoking gun." Jenna pulled up an email exchange. "Your father's been corresponding with Marcus Thorne about a business opportunity. Read the subtext. Thorne's proposing to short sell certain stocks based on insider information your father provides. The wedding is just a sideshow. They're planning securities fraud." My stomach turned. My father's risking prison to work with the man who tried to destroy my company. "He doesn't know it's your company," Jenna reminded me. "To him, Halcyon is just another corporation to exploit. But Riley, if they go through with this..." "They won't." I pulled out my phone. "Darren, I need you to monitor all communications between my father and Marcus Thorne. Everything. And loop in Veronica. She has contacts at the SEC who should know about this." "Already on it," Darren's voice came through. "Your father's not as smart as he thinks. His email password is literally password 123. I have access to everything." "Of course it is." I rubbed my temples. "What else?" "Your mother's been interesting too. Seems she's telling different stories to different people about the wedding finances. To her book club, you're ungrateful and demanding. To the charity board, she's the self-sacrificing mother. She's building a narrative for after the humiliation, poor Marion dealing with such a difficult daughter." "Document everything," I said. "Every contradiction, every lie." "With pleasure. Oh, and Eleanor Vance RSVP'd, yes. She'll be at table 12 as requested." I hung up and looked at Jenna. How bad could this get for them, legally speaking? The tax fraud alone could mean serious fines, possible jail time. The securities fraud, that's federal. Your father could be looking at 20 years. Part of me, the daughter who once drew him Father's Day cards and waited up for his goodnight kisses, flinched. But that girl had died the night I heard him planning my humiliation with such cold calculation. "I won't turn them in," I said finally, "but they need to know I could. That evidence will be my insurance policy after the wedding." "Merciful of you." "Not mercy, practicality. Grandma Rose doesn't need to see her son in prison. But they need to understand that their actions have consequences." Jenna nodded, gathering the documents. "The dress modifications sound incredible, by the way. Very Disney villain transformation, but in reverse." That's the idea. I stood to leave, then paused. Jenna, thank you. For everything. Are you kidding? This is the most fun I've had since law school. Corporate law is boring. Family warfare with couture and federal crimes, now that's entertainment. I left her office feeling the weight of what was coming. In 1 week I'd stand before everyone I knew and shed my skin like a snake revealing the truth beneath. My family thought they were directing a comedy at my expense. They had no idea they'd cast themselves in a tragedy of their own making. The dress hung in my closet at home, innocent-looking to the casual observer. But I knew better. It wasn't just a wedding dress anymore. It was a countdown to revelations stitched in silk and secrets. And when that first thread pulled, it wouldn't be my world that unraveled. It would be theirs. The evidence spread across my dining table like a prosecutor's case file. Jenna had outdone herself: bank statements, email printouts, text messages, and a timeline that would make any detective proud. Each document told part of the story, but together they painted a masterpiece of greed and betrayal. Walk me through it once more, I said, my voice steady despite the churning in my stomach. Jenna adjusted her glasses, pointing to the first timeline marker. January 15th. Your mother withdraws $10,000 from the joint account. Same day, Sloan deposits $9,500 into hers. The missing $500 cash untraceable. February 3rd, she continued. Your father emails Marcus Thorne about mutual opportunities. Thorne responds with insider information about Prentice Corp's upcoming merger. Your father then purchases significant options through a shell account. My fingers traced the email printout. He's not even subtle about it. Arrogance, Jenna diagnosed. He thinks his consulting firm connections make him untouchable. Now here's where it gets interesting. She pulled out another sheet. Your parents created a fake vendor, Everlasting Memories LLC. It's registered to a P.O. box, has a basic website, and guess who owns it? Sloan. Bingo. They've been billing wedding expenses to this company, inflating costs by 30%. The excess flows directly to Sloan's accounts. She's bought a new car designer clothes, even put a deposit on a condo, all with your wedding money. I studied the incorporation documents. How did they think they'd get away with this? Because who audits their daughter's wedding? Darren's voice came through my laptop speaker. He was video conferencing from his studio. They assumed you'd be too emotional, too grateful, or too humiliated after their prank to ever look closely at the finances. The prank, I said, the word bitter on my tongue. Show me the recordings again. Darren's face was replaced by audio waveforms. My family's voices filled the room. She's always acted superior. This will teach her. My mother. Remember when she corrected Senator Walsh's grammar at the fundraiser? He still mentions it. My father's laugh. After this, she'll think twice before embarrassing us. I call dibs on posting the video. My followers will die. Sloan, gleeful as a child, promised candy. The seamstress guaranteed the dress will come apart completely. My mother again. Every stitch. I told her it was for a theater production about body shaming. She was so sympathetic she reinforced my pull thread with fishing line for free. Sloan's giggle made my skin crawl. Darren reappeared. I have 17 hours of similar content. They discuss angles for filming, who should be positioned where, even practiced your father's speech to maximize the humiliation impact. The speech, I said. You have that. Every version. A new document appeared on screen. He's written 4 drafts, each crueler than the last. The final version includes jokes about your failed ambitions and finally accepting your place. He plans to end with, maybe now she'll understand that pride goes before a fall. Ethan, who'd been quietly reviewing contracts in the corner, slammed his pen down. I've stayed calm through all of this, but I need to say your family is sick, Riley. This isn't normal rivalry or even resentment. This is psychological torture they've planned like a military operation. I know, I said quietly. Believe me, I know. Jenna pulled out her tablet. Speaking of military operations, let's discuss deployment. The ceremony starts at 4. Your father's speech is scheduled for 7:45, I recited from memory. After dinner before the father-daughter dance. Maximum audience attention, slight alcohol buzz to enhance reactions. Right, so here's the sequence. She pulled up a detailed schedule. 7:45, your father begins speaking. Based on his rehearsals, he'll reach the Pride Before Fall line at approximately 7:52. That's Sloane's cue to move behind you. Darren picked up the thread. My cameras will track her movement. The moment she touches the thread, I'll trigger the lighting change. The screens will already be queued with our content ready to override whatever garbage your mother loads. What about Marcus and Eleanor? Ethan asked. They're wild cards. Controlled wild cards, I corrected. Marcus thinks he's there to humiliate me further and compromise my father into his insider trading scheme. Eleanor's there because she can't resist drama. Neither knows about our plans. Your family's going to claim the evidence is fabricated, Jenna warned. We should be prepared for that. Hard to claim fabrication when it matches reality, Darren said. I'll have live cameras on their reactions. When the account numbers appear on screen, we'll capture your parents' recognition in real time. When their voices play admitting to the scheme, we'll document every flinch. I stood walking to the window. Outside, life continued normally, people walking dogs, couples holding hands, families who presumably didn't plot each other's destruction over wedding cake samples. There's still time to call it off, I said, not turning around. We could confront them privately, handle this without the spectacle. You could, Jenna agreed. But what would change? They'd deny it, play victim, twist the narrative. Your mother would cry about ungrateful children. Your father would rage about disrespect. Sloane would post vague Instagram stories about family drama and toxicity. And in 6 months, they'd do it again, Ethan added. Maybe not at a wedding, but somewhere else. They've shown you who they are, Riley. Believe them. He was right. They all were. This wasn't about one cruel prank. It was about a lifetime of diminishment, of being treated as less than, of having my achievements ignored while my failures were spotlighted. The financial evidence, I said, returning to the table. I want it packaged separately, not for the wedding, for after. Jenna raised an eyebrow. Insurance. Leverage. They'll want to control the narrative post-wedding. This ensures they can't. One wrong move, one public lie about what happened, and the SEC gets an anonymous tip about insider trading. Ruthless, Darren approved. I like it. Not ruthless, protective. I gathered the papers, organizing them into neat piles. After the wedding, I'll give them a choice. Admit what they did, apologize publicly, and return every penny they stole or face investigation. Clean slate in exchange for truth. You think they'll take it? My father will. Prison orange isn't his color. My mother will follow his lead. Sloane, I shrugged. She'll probably try to spin it as performance art and launch a reality show. Despite everything, we laughed. It felt good breaking the tension that had built over weeks of planning. One more thing, Darren said. Your grandmother. How do we protect her from the fallout? I'd thought about this constantly. Grandma Rose sits at table 3 with Ethan's parents. She'll have the best view but be far from the blast radius. I've already talked to her, not details, but enough. She knows something's coming and to trust me. She said anything. Just that it was about time someone taught my parents a lesson about consequences. I smiled at the memory. Then she offered to loan me her vintage Chanel suit, because a woman needs armor for battle. I love her, Jenna said fervently. Can she adopt me? My phone buzzed. A text from Sloane. Final fitting tomorrow at 2. So excited to stand by your side, sis. I showed the others. Still think I'm being too harsh. Not harsh enough, Ethan muttered. I typed back, can't wait. It's going to be unforgettable. At least that part was true. In 5 days, my family would orchestrate what they believed would be my humiliation. They'd pull their thread, expecting me to unravel. Instead, they'd pull the pin on a grenade I'd been carefully constructing. The explosion would be contained, targeted, but devastating to those caught in the blast. I looked at the evidence one more time, their greed, cruelty, and hubris documented in black and white. They'd given me everything I needed to destroy them. The only question now was whether they'd survive what they'd started. The Ravencrest estate sprawled across 15 acres of manicured grounds in Seabrook Hills, its Georgian facade glowing amber in the setting sun. I stood in the bridal suite, watching through leaded glass windows as guests arrived in waves of designer gowns and bespoke suits. Below, Darren's team worked with the efficiency of a special forces unit, installing the last of our preparations. "Camera 12 is live," his voice crackled through my earpiece. "Hidden in the ice sculpture. Camera 13 is in the chandelier directly above the head table. We now have 360 coverage of the entire ballroom." Isadora bustled around me, making final adjustments to the dress. "Remember when you feel the tug count to 3 before reacting. Let the mechanisms engage properly." "She's rehearsed it," Ethan said from the doorway, devastating in his charcoal tuxedo. "We've run through it 20 times. 21 never hurts," Isadora muttered, fluffing the outer layer one more time. A knock interrupted us. Jenna entered, tablet in hand, wearing a sleek navy dress that made her look more like a guest than the legal weapon she was. "Status update," she announced. "Your parents arrived 30 minutes ago. Your mother's already cornered the photographer about special moments she wants captured. Your father's glad-handing investors in the garden. And Sloane," she pulled up a photo on her tablet. "She's in the bridesmaid suite live streaming her makeup process and talking about surprising the bride." "Let her stream," I said. "More documentation for us." "Marcus Thorne just checked in," Jenna continued. "He's wearing a wire, by the way. Probably trying to record your father for leverage." "Of course he is." I almost admired the mutual backstabbing. And Eleanor, "Table 12 is requested. She's wearing white because of course she is. Your mother hasn't noticed yet." Another knock. Charlotte Reeves from the Washington Post entered, her press credentials discreetly tucked away, but her sharp eyes missing nothing. "Riley, you look absolutely stunning. That dress is Isadora Vale, isn't it?" "Custom design," I confirmed. She outdid herself. Charlotte circled me slowly, her trained eye cataloging every detail. "The construction is unusual, almost like layers meant to separate." Isadora and I exchanged glances. "I wanted something transformative," I said carefully. "A dress that could evolve throughout the evening." "Intriguing," Charlotte made a note in her phone. "I'll be paying special attention during the reception. Fashion that tells a story is my favorite kind." After she left, Darren's voice returned to my earpiece. "Lighting check complete. When the transformation happens, you'll be hit with 10,000 lumens from 3 angles. The crystals will throw light like a disco ball made of diamonds." "Subtle," Ethan murmured. "Subtle was never the goal," I reminded him. My phone buzzed. A text from my grandmother. "In position at table 3. Brought my opera glasses for a better view. Give them hell, darling." Despite everything, I smiled. Then another message, this one from an unknown number. "We know what you're planning." My blood chilled. I showed the others. "Could be a bluff," Jenna said, though she immediately started typing on her tablet. "The number's untraceable burner phone." "Or it could be real," Ethan said, moving to the window to scan the grounds. "Someone could have overheard something or—" "It doesn't matter." I cut him off, decision crystallizing. "We proceed as planned. If they know, they know. But I'm not backing down now." Darren's voice turned urgent. "Heads up, your sister's on the move. She's heading your way with the other bridesmaids." "Showtime," Isadora whispered, giving me one last hug. "Remember, you're not the victim in this story. You're the phoenix." She slipped out through the adjoining door just as Sloane burst in with my 3 other bridesmaids' cousins, who'd been included for appearances. Sloane wore her burgundy dress like armor, every hair perfectly placed, her smile camera ready. "There's my beautiful sister." She air-kissed my cheeks, careful not to disturb my makeup. "Are you nervous? You look nervous. Don't worry. Everything's going to be perfect." The other bridesmaids cooed over my dress, genuinely excited. They had no idea what was planned pawns in Sloane's game, innocent of the conspiracy. "Let me fix your train," Sloane offered, moving behind me. I watched in the mirror as her fingers found the hidden thread, testing its strength. Her smile widened. "There, perfect. Though this seam feels a little loose." "It's fine," I said evenly. "Isadora checked everything twice." If you're sure. She stepped back, satisfaction gleaming in her eyes. Dad's speech is going to be amazing, by the way. He's been practicing all week. So emotional. I'm sure it will be memorable, I agreed. The wedding coordinator appeared. 5 minutes, ladies. Processional positions, please. As the others filed out, Sloane lingered. Riley, I just want you to know, whatever happens today, you're still my sister. Family is forever. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. I met her eyes in the mirror. Yes, Sloane. Family is exactly what we make it. She left and I was alone with Ethan for one last moment. You can still, he began. No. I stood the dress moving like liquid light around me. They made their choice. Now I make mine. He kissed me softly, careful of my lipstick. Then let's go show them what happens when they mistake kindness for weakness. The orchestra's first notes drifted up from below. 200 guests were taking their seats, phones already out to capture the moment. Among them sat my parents, confident in their plan. Sloane stood with the other bridesmaids, finger probably itching for the thread she'd pull. Marcus Thorne lounged at his table, ready to document whatever chaos ensued. Eleanor Vance adjusted her inappropriate white dress, a specter from my father's past. And somewhere in the wings, Darren sat at his control station, finger poised over buttons that would transform their cruelty into their comeuppance. I took one last look in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the Riley they thought they knew. The disappointment, the failure, the family embarrassment. This was Riley Hart, CEO of Halcyon Strategy Group, about to execute the most important merger of her life, the union of truth and consequences. The wedding coordinator returned. It's time. I lifted my chin, squared my shoulders, and glided toward the door. In the ballroom below, the orchestra swelled into the processional march. 200 guests rose to their feet. My father waited at the end of the aisle, ready to give away a daughter he'd never truly known. The curtain was rising on the performance of a lifetime, and I was ready for my entrance. The ballroom fell silent as my father rose from his seat, champagne flute catching the light. 7:45 exactly, he'd always been punctual in his cruelty. I sat at the head table, Ethan's hand warm over mine, feeling the weight of 200 expectant gazes. Ladies and gentlemen, my father began, his voice carrying the polished authority of countless boardroom presentations. As father of the bride, it's my privilege to share a few words about my daughter Riley. In my peripheral vision, I caught Sloane shifting in her seat, angling for the best approach path. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, practicing for the tears she'd shed over my humiliation. Riley has always been unique. My father continued the pause, loaded with meaning that would become clear only in retrospect. From the time she was young, she had grand ambitions, dreams that were perhaps too big for her wings. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Those who knew our family dynamics shifted uncomfortably. I remember when she was 12, she announced she'd be a CEO one day. His chuckle held no warmth. We tried to guide her toward more realistic goals, but Riley never did like listening to wisdom. Through my earpiece, Darren whispered, "Sloane's moving. She's circling to your 6 o'clock." I kept my expression serene, the bride hanging on her father's every word. Today, as I give her hand to Ethan, a man who sees past her pride and stubbornness to the woman she could become, I'm filled with hope. My father raised his glass higher. Hope that marriage will teach her what we never could, the value of humility, of knowing one's place, of accepting guidance from those who know better. My fingernails pressed crescents into my palm beneath the table. Ethan's grip tightened protectively. Because pride, my father said, his voice dropping to theatrical solemnity, pride goes before, a fall, I whispered, just as Sloane struck. Her hand found the thread at the exact moment my father delivered his punchline. The pull was vicious, meant to strip me bare in a single motion. The sound of rending fabric should have filled the ballroom. Instead, magic happened. The outer layer of my dress released in a choreographed cascade, each panel floating away like snow in a globe. But instead of revealing underwear and humiliation, the hidden dress beneath erupted in light. 10,000 lumens hit the crystals from 3 angles, and suddenly I wasn't falling, I was ascending. I rose from my chair as the transformation completed the crystalline dress, throwing rainbows across the stunned faces of the guests. The hairpin Isadora had given me activated, creating a halo effect that made me appear to glow from within. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Phones swung my way, capturing not humiliation, but transformation. Charlotte Reeves was already typing furiously, her trained eye recognizing couture theater when she saw it. But the show was just beginning. Behind me, Sloane stumbled back, her own sudden movement triggering the weakened seams in her dress. The burgundy fabric split dramatically along one side, revealing the industrial-strength shapewear she'd sworn she never wore. Her shriek of horror was perfectly captured by camera 13. "Technical difficulties with the slideshow," Darren announced in my ear. "Switching to backup content in 3, 2, 1. The screens around the ballroom, which should have displayed my teenage awkwardness, flickered to life with very different images. First, the audio. My family's voices filled the space. One firm tug during the father-daughter dance, and boom, the whole thing unravels. She needs to learn her place. I called dibs on posting the video. The guests' murmur grew to a roar as the financial documents appeared. Bank statements, transfer records, the fake vendor invoices, all displayed with clinical precision. My father's face had gone from smug satisfaction to ash gray. His champagne flute slipped from nerveless fingers, shattering on the floor. My mother's practiced tears became real ones as she saw her secret financial manipulations exposed to everyone she'd tried to impress. "No," Sloane gasped, trying simultaneously to hold her dress together and grab for something, anything to stop the projection. We didn't." The final slide appeared, a simple organizational chart showing Halcyon Strategy Group's leadership. At the top, in elegant letters, Riley Hart, CEO and founder. The ballroom erupted. Veronica Hale rose from her seat, slow clapping with deliberate precision. "Brava, Riley. Though I must say I preferred your strategic takedown of the Morrison acquisition. This is a bit theatrical for my taste." Robert Chase joined her. "Theatrical, maybe, but effective. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed why Riley Hart is the youngest CEO to ever secure a Pinnacle Investment Partners backing. The woman you tried to humiliate built a billion-dollar company while you plotted her downfall." Ethan stood beside me, his best man's speech forgotten in favor of improvisation. "My wife," he paused, smiling. "Well, almost wife, taught me something important. When people show you who they are, believe them. The Hart family showed us tonight they're thieves, liars, and bullies. Riley showed us she's a phoenix." Through the chaos, I heard Marcus Thorne's voice. "Victor, we need to talk about our arrangement." "Not now." My father's desperation was palpable as he tried to reach the AV controls, only to be blocked by Darren's security team. The coup de grace came from an unexpected source. Eleanor Vance stood her white dress, making her impossible to miss. "Oh, Victor," she called out, voice carrying across the ballroom. "Still making the same mistakes, at least when you humiliated me at the Pemberton Gala, you had the decency to do it privately." My mother's wail could have shattered crystal. The society matrons she'd cultivated for decades were already turning away phones out the gossip mill, churning at unprecedented speed. "Turn it off," my father roared, his polished veneer completely shattered. "This is illegal. It's fraud. It's evidence," Jenna said smoothly, appearing at his elbow with a manila envelope. "Of tax evasion, securities fraud, embezzlement. Would you like to discuss this privately? Mr. Hart, I believe the FBI would be very interested in your communications with Mr. Thorne." The fight went out of him like air from a punctured balloon. I stood in the center of the chaos, my transformed dress still catching light, and found my voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption to your evening, but I couldn't let this moment pass without honesty. My family plotted to humiliate me tonight as a lesson in humility. Instead, they've learned a lesson in consequences." I turned to my parents and Sloane, who looked like actors who'd forgotten their lines. "The money you stole will be returned. Every penny. You'll apologize publicly for what you attempted here. In exchange, I won't pursue criminal charges. You have 48 hours to decide. Then to the guests. For those who came to celebrate love and new beginnings, the reception will continue as planned. For those who came to witness cruelty, I gestured to the screen still displaying evidence. I hope you're satisfied with the show. The orchestra, bless them, struck up a waltz. Ethan offered me his hand. May I have this dance, Mrs. Soon-to-be Walker? Always, I said, letting him lead me onto the floor. As we spun past the head table, I caught sight of my family. My parents sat frozen society crumbling around them. Sloane had fled probably to the bathroom, her torn dress and ruined plans trailing behind her. But at table 3, Grandma Rose raised her champagne glass to me, her smile radiant with pride. The thread had been pulled just as they'd planned. But it was their world that had unraveled, not mine. The waltz continued, but the real dance was happening on the screens surrounding us. As Ethan and I moved across the floor, Darren orchestrated the digital symphony with surgical precision. The slides transitioned from financial documents to something far more damning: video footage. Is that? Someone gasped. On-screen crystal-clear security footage showed my mother at the bank withdrawing stacks of cash. The timestamp matched the dates on the forged invoices. Another screen showed Sloane at a luxury car dealership signing papers for her new Mercedes paid for with wedding funds. But the masterstroke was the audio layered over the visuals. My parents' own words recorded in their study provided the perfect narration. She's too proud for her own good. This will finally put her in her place. Acting like she's better than us because she's marrying into the Walker family. The juxtaposition was devastating. While they spoke of teaching me humility, the screens showed their greed. While they called me prideful, the evidence revealed their own hubris. Ladies and gentlemen, Darren's voice came through the sound system smooth as aged whiskey. What you're witnessing is 3 months of documented financial fraud. Every transaction verified. Every conversation legally recorded in spaces with no expectation of privacy. The Hart family didn't just plan to humiliate their daughter, they funded it with stolen money. I spotted Charlotte Reeves near the dance floor, her phone recording everything. Tomorrow's style section would be explosive. But more importantly, the 3 other journalists I'd quietly invited were also documenting every moment. The business reporter from the Financial Times, the investigative journalist from the Wall Street Journal, the society columnist whose blog reached every major family on the East Coast. Stop this! My father had found a microphone, his voice cracking with desperation. This is a family matter. You're all being manipulated by a vindictive... The screens changed again. Now they showed emails between him and Marcus Thorne discussing insider trading plans. The SEC investigators in attendance, invited as Ethan's family friends, leaned forward with professional interest. Vindictive, I asked, my voice carrying without a microphone thanks to the acoustics Darren had arranged. I gave you every opportunity to be the family you pretended to be. Instead, you chose cruelty. You chose theft. You chose to conspire with a man who tried to destroy my company. Yes, Marcus, I know about your short-selling scheme. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Marcus Thorne stood abruptly, making for the exit, only to find Jenna's security team blocking his path. Leaving so soon? Jenna asked sweetly. But we haven't even discussed the forged documents you provided to damage Halcyon's reputation last year. I believe the statute of limitations hasn't quite run out on corporate defamation. The society matrons my mother had courted for decades were whispering behind their hands, their expressions ranging from shock to barely concealed delight. Nothing pleased old money more than watching new money self-destruct. Riley Hart, one of them announced loudly, has just demonstrated why Halcyon Strategy Group is the future of ethical business. Transparency, accountability, and the courage to stand against corruption even when it's family. Especially when it's family, Veronica Hale added, raising her glass. On the screens, a new image appeared, the email I discovered that morning. The one that changed everything. Did you all know, I said, still dancing with Ethan but addressing the room, that my parents took out a loan against Grandma Rose's house to cover their lifestyle expenses? The home she's lived in for 60 years is now at risk because they needed to maintain appearances. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Grandma Rose, sharp as ever at 85, stood slowly. "Is this true, Victor?" Her voice carried the weight of decades of disappointment. "You mortgaged my home." My father's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. "Mother, I can explain. 60 years, she continued, steel in her voice. 60 years I've lived in that house, where your father proposed to me, where you were born, and you risked it for what? For country club dues and luxury cars. It's not like that." My mother finally found her voice. "We had expenses. The business was struggling, and we had to maintain our position." "Your position," Grandma Rose laughed bitterly. "Your position was built on lies. While you plotted against Riley for being too proud, she was building an empire. While you stole from her wedding, she was signing deals worth more than you'll see in a lifetime. The only position you've maintained is that of fools." The screens shifted once more now, showing a simple statement. "All wedding expenses paid by the Hart family have been donated to the Rose Hart Foundation for Financial Literacy, a new charity established to help families avoid financial exploitation. Every penny they stole," I announced, "has been matched and donated. Grandma Rose's house has been paid off in full as of this morning. She'll never have to worry about their schemes again." "You can't just—" Sloane had returned hastily wrapped in a tablecloth to cover her torn dress. "This is illegal. You hacked our accounts. You—" "Actually," Darren interrupted, appearing at the AV station with a satisfied smile. "Every piece of evidence was obtained legally. Amazing what people post on social media, what they say in public spaces, what they document in emails sent from company servers with clearly stated monitoring policies. Your father's consulting firm's IT policy, which he definitely should have read, states that all emails are company property. As for the audio recordings," Jenna added, "they were made in the hallway outside your father's study, a public area of the house with no expectation of privacy. The footage from banks and businesses, they provided it willingly when informed of potential fraud. We didn't need to hack anything. You broadcast your crimes yourselves." The final slide appeared, the truth about the Hart family wedding. It was a comprehensive timeline starting with their first planning session and ending with tonight. Every meeting, every transaction, every cruel word meticulously documented. At the bottom, a QR code. For those interested in the full documentation, I said scan the code. Every piece of evidence will be available on a public website as of midnight tonight. Call it my wedding gift to anyone who's ever been betrayed by family. "You're ruining us," my mother wailed. "Your own family. How could you—" I stopped dancing, facing them fully for the first time since the revelation began. "You ruined yourselves the moment you chose cruelty over love. I just made sure everyone could see it." "Mr. Hart," one of the SEC investigators approached my father. "We'll need to speak with you about those communications with Marcus Thorne. Monday morning, our offices. Bring a lawyer." As security quietly escorted Marcus out, Eleanor Vance raised her champagne glass. "To karma," she said loudly, "and to Riley Hart, who proved that the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served at exactly 7:52 p.m. in front of 200 witnesses." The laughter that followed broke whatever spell had held the room. Conversations resumed. The band struck up a livelier tune, and incredibly the reception continued. But it was a different party now, one celebrating truth over deception, courage over cruelty. My family sat isolated at their table, the empty seats around them growing as former friends distanced themselves. In the span of 7 minutes, they'd gone from society fixtures to pariahs. "Was it worth it?" Ethan asked quietly, spinning me under his arm. "Destroying them so publicly?" I looked at my parents, my father staring blankly at the screens, my mother crying real tears now, Sloane furiously typing on her phone, trying to control a narrative that had already escaped. Then I looked at Grandma Rose surrounded by well-wishers finally free from their financial manipulations. "They destroyed themselves," I said. "I just didn't let them take me down with them." The screens went dark, the evidence portion of the evening complete. But the party continued transformed from a celebration of marriage to something else, a celebration of truth, of standing up to bullies, of refusing to be diminished. Tomorrow the headlines would scream. Social media would explode. My family would wake to find themselves infamous. But tonight I danced with the man I loved, surrounded by people who saw me for who I truly was, finally free from the shadows of my family's expectations. The thread had been pulled, and I was the only one left standing. The music had shifted to something slower when Marcus Thorne made his last desperate play. He'd managed to slip past security during the chaos, and now stood near the head table with a manila folder raised high. "Before I go," he announced, voice cutting through the conversations, "let me share what Victor Hart promised me in exchange for my help. Internal documents from 3 major firms, insider information worth millions." He never finished the sentence. Eleanor Vance, of all people, snatched the folder from his hands. "Still trying to play games, Marcus?" She opened the folder, scanning its contents with practiced eyes. Then she laughed, a rich, genuine sound. "Oh, Victor, you were going to sell out your own clients. Even I never thought you'd sink that low." She handed the papers to the nearest SEC investigator, who examined them with growing interest. My father's face went from gray to ghostly white. That's not... I can explain." "No need," the investigator said calmly. "This is evidence of conspiracy to commit securities fraud across state lines. Mr. Hart, you're going to need that lawyer sooner than Monday." But the evening's surprises weren't finished. Grandma Rose stood again, this time producing documents of her own. "Speaking of lawyers," she said, her voice carrying clearly, "I had mine draw these up this morning after Riley told me about the mortgage." She walked to my parents' table with the dignity of a queen approaching traitors. "Disinheritance papers. Sign them." "Mother, you can't." "I can, and I will." Her voice brooked no argument. "You mortgaged my home, stole from your daughter, and planned to humiliate her for sport. You're no son of mine. Sign the papers or I'll pursue criminal charges for fraud and elder abuse." With shaking hands, my father signed. My mother followed, tears streaming. Sloane just stared, her phone finally silent, the reality of their situation sinking in. "As for you," Grandma Rose turned to me, her expression softening. "Everything goes to you, Riley. The house, the investments, all of it. Use it better than they ever could." "Grandma." "No arguments. It's decided." She kissed my cheek. "Now I believe there's cake to cut." The rest of the reception passed in a blur of surreal normalcy. We cut the cake, Sloane notably absent from the traditional photos. We tossed the bouquet caught by Jenna, who immediately handed it to her girlfriend. We danced and laughed and celebrated while my family's table sat empty, its former occupants having fled into the night. Charlotte Reeves approached during a quiet moment. "This story will run in tomorrow's style section, but Riley, this is bigger than fashion. This is about power, family, and truth. May I have an exclusive follow-up interview?" "Next week," I agreed, "after the honeymoon." As midnight approached, Ethan and I prepared to leave. The send-off line formed, filled with genuine well-wishers. Veronica Hale pressed a business card into my hand. "Call me about the Singapore expansion. We should talk." Robert Chase simply winked and said, "Best wedding I've ever attended." We were almost to the door when a small commotion erupted behind us. Sloane had returned one last time, mascara streaked and desperate. "Riley, wait." She pushed through the crowd. "You can't leave it like this. We're sisters. We're family." I turned slowly, meeting her eyes. "No, Sloane. Family doesn't plot your humiliation. Family doesn't steal from you. Family doesn't try to destroy you for their entertainment." "It was just a prank." The words burst out of her. "We didn't mean..." "You meant every second of it," I cut her off. "You rehearsed pulling that thread. You fantasized about posting my humiliation online. You spent stolen money while planning my downfall. That's not a prank, that's cruelty." "So you destroyed us instead." Her voice cracked. "You took everything." "I took nothing. You destroyed yourselves with your own choices. I just made sure everyone saw it happen." Darren appeared at her elbow. "Ms. Hart, I'll need you to leave now. You're no longer welcome at this venue." As security escorted her out, she turned back one last time. "This isn't over." "Yes," I said firmly, "it is." Ethan and I walked out to the waiting car, rice raining down from the happy guests. As we drove away, I saw the three figures huddled by the valet stand my parents and Sloane waiting for their cars, their empire in ruins. "Any regrets?" Ethan asked, pulling me close. I thought about it seriously. The little girl who'd once drawn Father's Day cards and waited for goodnight kisses might have regretted it. The teenager who'd tried so hard to earn their approval might have felt guilty. But the woman I'd become forged in boardrooms and betrayals, strengthened by success they couldn't see and love they couldn't understand. None, I said, and meant it. My phone buzzed with notifications. The QR code had been scanned thousands of times. Hashtag Hart Family Wedding was trending. The court of public opinion had rendered its verdict. "So what now?" Ethan asked. "You've vanquished your enemies, revealed your true identity, saved your grandmother's house. What does a CEO do for an encore?" I smiled, thinking of Singapore, of Halcyon's next expansion of the life we'd build together. "Now, we go on our honeymoon. We come back. We build empires. We love each other. We live well." "The best revenge," he agreed. As the city lights blurred past the window, I thought about the thread Sloane had pulled. She'd meant it to unravel me, to leave me exposed and humiliated. Instead, it had revealed something beautiful underneath not just the crystalline dress, but the truth of who I was. Strong, successful, unashamed. My family had given me one gift with their cruelty: the opportunity to step fully into my power, to stop hiding my light under the bushel of their expectations. They'd wanted to teach me a lesson about pride and humility. Instead, they'd learned one about consequences. The thread had been pulled. The unraveling was complete. But I wasn't the one left bare. I was finally fully, authentically myself. And that was worth more than all the wedding gifts in the world. Thank you for listening to this story of family betrayal and ultimate triumph. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below, and let's connect and share our thoughts on Riley's journey. If you enjoyed this tale of revenge served at exactly the right temperature, please subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and don't forget to press the hype button to help more people discover this story. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to share more stories with you soon.